Hi guys, and welcome back to another day of Vlogmas. Today I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite books from this year and some books that I just wasn't vibing with. So I'm going to be rating all of the new books I read this year. I did do some rereading on some old books, so I'm not going to include those because it's books that I used to read in middle school. I'm pretty sure I covered them in an older video from this year. I will link it in the description box below if you haven't seen it. Just like last year, I'm going to go through all the books. I'm going to say what I liked about them, what I didn't like, any books that stood out to me, any books that I just hated. That's usually very rare, but it did happen this year. The ranking system, I just kind of base it on 5 stars. 5 stars is like perfection, can't get any better. 4.5 stars is like almost like perfection, but like it's very hard to rank at 5 stars. You gotta be like top tier shit. 4, great. 3 to 3.5, like I'd reread it, but it's not my favorite book. Anything below a 3, I wouldn't reread again, but it was at least entertaining enough. If it's below 2 stars, then I hated it. If you got a star, I was being gracious, most likely, because you can't give it 0 stars. So let's just get into it. So I'm gonna go in order as I read them throughout the year. I didn't get to read as many as I wanted to. I think I was picking some longer books that maybe just took too long. 8 of the books I read this year were rereads, so that's part of the issue. We started off the year with Persuasion. I read Pride and Prejudice last year, loved it. Took me a minute to get into it because it's a different style of writing, but I really enjoyed that book. I enjoyed most of this, like the plot was really good. Some of the characters were really interesting. I loved her sister being a dramatic ass, like over the top. I think the main character was a little dry. She could have been a little more interesting, but I think that's part of the reason. It's just like, she's just so passive. They did make this into a Netflix movie recently, and I watched the movie. I didn't hate it. I know a lot of people hated it because it took a lot of the art out of it, I think, and it was really trying to be Bridgerton. So like, I thought the movie was entertaining, but I agree that there's some things in it that just did not live up to the Jane Austen book. And yeah, so this one's one of her shorter books, and it's also really pretty. I got it from Barnes & Noble. So I bought this, and I bought Emma at the time. So now I've got 3 Jane Austen books. But Persuasion, I liked how it ended. I liked some of the ups and downs. I don't want to get too spoilery with it, but I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't as good as Pride and Prejudice, but I still enjoyed it. Most of the characters were interesting. I liked the will they, won't they, gets back together kind of vibe. So 3 out of 5 stars, would recommend. The next one is a book talk favorite, The Love Hypothesis. It was around like Valentine's Day, so I was getting into like the romance and stuff kind of books. I gave this one 2.5 stars. So I would reread it, especially because I own it. There was stuff I liked about it. It's a little cliche. I enjoyed some of the characters, some of the romantic-esque vibes, but the one thing that really dropped it down for me was the, spoiler alert, it's not a big spoiler, was the sexual harassment plot of it, like the section where she gets harassed by Dr. Carlson's friend. She gets like harassed by him, and I just feel like it's overdone. It's like one of those tropes that I can't stand it. Like I don't want it. It doesn't need to be there. Like it was very tropey, very cliche. But was it an easy, just hang out kind of read book? Yeah, so 2.5 stars. But would I rate it any higher? No. Maybe on a second read I might give it like a 3 star, but not more than that, because I like a good trope. I like a good cliche, but sometimes it gets a little bit too cliche. And I'm like, listen, y'all gotta try a little harder on that. So Love Hypothesis, 2.5 stars. May or may not read it again in the future. It's not a book that I hated though, so, but it was just one of those books. It was mid. It was mid. Moving on, we went into some autobiographies and kind of rock and roll history type of books for the springtime. I started out with The First 21 by Nikki Sixx. I have read his other books. I read The Dirt. I read The Heroine Diaries. Both really great books. The Dirt is very fun. It's very 80s, like rock and roll. The Heroine Diaries, it's really good. It's very sad at the same time because he was struggling with a heroin addiction. This covers the first 21 years of his life right before he became Nikki Sixx. His real name is Frank Farana. So this book covers his life as Frank before he changes his name and becomes Nikki Sixx. And I really enjoyed it, and there's a little bit of flash forward to present day, kind of comparing how he grew up in a terrible situation, and then nowadays he's got a family, he lives on a farm, I think a farm. He lives in the countryside. The first 21 years of his life, he was a little rebellious child, and then if you've read The Dirt or you've seen The Dirt, yeah, he was your typical 80s rock star. But I enjoyed the book. I wish it was a little bit longer. Again, you're only covering the first 21 years of your life, so it's hard to remember a lot of that, especially. It's probably very hard for him to remember most of it. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I would recommend it if you are a Motley Crue fan, a Nikki Sixx fan, 80s rock and roll fan, any kind of fan like that. I thought it was very enjoyable to read, and it's a quick read. 3.5 stars. I would read it again. This next one took me quite a long time because I was also reading other books at the time, like some of my rereads, and it's also super long. This book is called Nothing But a Good Time. It covers the 80s rock scene, the glam metal, hair metal, whatever you want to call it scene, as it blew up basically on Sunset Strip, on the East Coast, and on the West Coast actually. So it covers different bands like Poison, Rat, Striper, Van Halen's mentioned, Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister. It was those bands that were less covered, like Twisted Sister and Quiet Riot, that they go into, because they're kind of the backbone of 80s rock, and they don't get as much credit. So it's told in this interview style. It's told in quotes from multiple people from the scene. You're getting producers, managers, the artists themselves. It was very interesting, but it did take me a long time because the way it's written, it's not told in story form. You're reading just quotes from people, and it's like it's over 500 pages. So, but I liked it. I liked how it got into some things that I didn't know anything about, because it covered bands that were less popular, that were still popular, but they weren't Motley Crue, they weren't Van Halen, but they were big. But they were the party rock scene is what I want to call it. Is they were the party bands that blew up a little bit and really embodied that 80s hair metal scene. So I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. I would read it again in the future. Not for a while, but it's definitely something that you could just go in and read like a chapter and you get some history behind it. So Nothing But a Good Time, 3.5 stars. So the next book I read was Daisy Jones and the Six. Everybody be reading Daisy Jones and the Six because it's good. I really loved this book. I loved Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid books. They're just interesting. They're engaging. There's a little bit of like romance to it, or they're all about romance, but it's not cliche. It's not based on like those tropes that you see. Book Talk does have it right with her, I think. I really enjoyed those books. Daisy Jones and the Six. It covers a band from the 70s that get together. Tumultuous times happen. They fall out. Well, they get very famous and then they fall out. I like to equate it to Fleetwood Mac because I think that's a lot of the vibes that are coming in with Daisy is very Stevie Nicks-esque. There's some dating, happenings, fighting going on in the band. They get really, really big and then they break up. It's told in a timeline, but they're told in interviews by the band members. I loved this book. I can't say enough about it. I did give it 4.5 stars. The half is because I felt like they rushed. I just felt like it was a little rushed towards the end, and that's one of my problems with her books is I feel like they do end a little abruptly, and that's why it's 4.5 and not 5, but loved it. Okay, so we were in our Taylor Jenkins Reid phase at the time. So next up we've got Malibu Rising. This one came out in 2019, I believe, right after Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's another book in that series where people are connected from Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's actually the children of one of her husbands, Mick Riva. It follows their story in the 80s, all centered around a party, and it's about, you know, childhood trauma, their dad not being there, Mick's trauma, their mom's trauma. Like, it follows that. There are surfers. It's Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kit, and they all have their own issues going on, but they still manage to come together as a family. They got to work through some of that childhood trauma, especially when their dad shows up. I really liked this one. Not as much as Daisy Jones and the Six, so I did give it 3.5 stars. I would reread it. I just think that, again, it was a little rushed at times, and I felt like the pacing could have been slower and really get to know these characters a little bit more. I would have liked that. It's not that I didn't like the characters. I liked Nina, I liked Kit. The brothers kind of like, I didn't feel anything for them. I feel like they could have probably been more developed, but I would still recommend it. I enjoyed it. Some people I know didn't like it, but it was a good read. 3.5 stars. Back at it with the Taylor Jenkins read, Maybe in Another Life. This is one of her first books, I believe. So this one follows 2 different timelines of a young woman who's kind of figuring out her life, and there's an accident in one timeline, and there's another timeline where she doesn't get in this accident. So it shows 2 different stories, chapter by chapter. They flip what happens if you take the red pill versus the blue pill kind of vibes. So I enjoyed this one, not as much as the other ones I've read. I also gave this one 3.5 stars. I would reread it again. I was rooting for both timelines. I think it helps you self-reflect and think about your choices in life. What if I took that path? What if I didn't go to work that day? Maybe in Another Life, I gave 3.5 stars as well. So I still would recommend it. Next, we're getting into summertime, and I was getting a little tropey with it, a little book talk. So I did read The Spanish Love Deception on vacation. I had fun reading it. It was definitely very book talk. It was very book talk, like fan fiction-esque. But it wasn't a bad read for me. Like, if I enjoy myself, I'm not going to be too critical. And the cliches were there, but it wasn't unbearable. One thing I didn't enjoy about it is it's another one of those books where she's so small and he's so big, and it's like, I hate that. It's like, we get it. You're small. You're a little 5-foot girl. And I actually am short, and I still hate that shit. But this guy is supposed to be the perfect looking man. He's obsessed with her low-key, but like they're enemies to lovers. But I don't get much of that enemies. It's just more of like they bicker. I think it's just he's kind of like a dick at first, but that's about it. It's not like he did something really bad. It kind of reminds me of what was the book I read last year, The Hating Game, where they kind of just bicker, and it's not really an enemies thing. It also includes fake dating. He goes to her sister's wedding with her because she absolutely desperately needs to have a date. So he goes to Spain with her. Like, honey, no man is gonna do that. They end up falling in love. He admits that he loves her, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars. Was it the best romance book ever? No. Did it have a little bit of spice? Yeah. So we do enjoy that. Just a little, like, sprinkles. It's got your tropes if you want it. If you want your enemies to lovers, if you want your fake dating, it's in here. It's there. But I'm not big on when enemies to lovers isn't really, like, enemies. Like, they gotta hate each other. They gotta hate each other. It's got it all if you like that stuff. So book talk, I gave it 3 stars. Better than The Love Hypothesis. Is it my favorite romance book? No. But good summer read. I will say that. It was a fun beach read for me. Some more romance books because tis the season in the summertime. This is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I gave this one 3 stars. I need to remember what it's about, honestly. January moves into her dad's second home on a beach town. She's a writer. She's got to get her book done. She hasn't been able to do it since her dad died because she's been having writer's block and a hard time. Her writer nemesis, Augustus, lives next door. They each decide to write about something different than they normally would. So he's going to write a romance. She's going to write something like moody and creepy kind of vibes. But they go on field trips together and they just start to hang out, and I enjoy their relationship. I think it's built up pretty well, and there's not much of that, oh, I hate him, like actual enemies to lovers. It's kind of just like, we didn't really hang out, and now we're gonna start hanging out, and eventually they fall in love like they always do, and they get through the writer's blocks. Spoilers. So there's other stuff in the book about her father and her relationship with her parents and why she's having these issues, so you'll have to read that to find out. But I did give it 3 out of 5 stars because I had fun reading it. I think why I gave it 3 stars is because her book, Book Lovers, which I read next, they're very similar, but I didn't care as much about each character between the books. I kind of was just like, they're the same person. Beach Read is 3 stars. Book Lovers, 3.5. I don't know where that extra half came from. I think I cared about the characters just a little bit more in this one. Again, they're writers or they're in the book industry. I think he's a writer or an editor and she's in the book industry. Don't quote me. So she goes to a small town, runs into a guy in publishing that she hates, of course, just like in Beach Read. She's there to take a break from the publishing industry because she works so hard. He's working remotely to help with his parents who are having issues. But it's a summer that they spend together. Two rivals, a plot twist they didn't see coming. I think I just enjoyed the story more in this book rather than in Beach Read. The characters could be more defined. I feel like they were very similar and I just could not tell the difference until I just sat down and compared the two, because I get it, you like books, you like to write, I understand. The characters between both books were just too similar and really hard to distinguish. So if you're reading one at a time, then you're fine. But if you're reading them back to back, it's kind of just like you're reading the characters in a different setting. So I think I liked Book Lovers just a little bit more than Beach Read, so that's why it's 3.5 stars and this was 3. But I'd read them again, so I do recommend them still. I just think that they're a chill read. They're not gonna grasp you. The next book we got, I hated it. I didn't even finish it. I got halfway through it and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I gave it 1 star. It was on Book Talk, Things We Never Got Over. I'm sorry if you liked it, but it was so bad. The dialogue is poorly written. The plot is so cliche. There's so many like, oh my god, I just hated it. This guy Knox is an asshole. And you want me to believe that she likes him? Like, he's such a dick. And he goes outside and he pisses outside of his door and she's just like, I can't believe I just saw that. And then she wants to hook up with him? Like, girl. I tried. The writing was really bad from the beginning and I'm like, I'll push through. Can't be that bad. But I got halfway through the book before I just gave up because I'm like, I need to move on. I don't want to read this anymore. This bride is a runaway bride. She has to go to this small town to help her twin sister because her twin sister claims that she needs her help. The twin sister took off, dumped her kid off on her because she's a con artist dirtbag. And she runs into this guy Knox who absolutely hates her sister, but he decides that he's gonna help her out because she seems like she needs a lot of help. She's lost everything. He's just like grumpy, but to an extent of like, there's a difference between like grumpy guys and this guy is just a miserable prick. Usually I can go for the sunshine ex grump trope, but like in this book, oh my god, I hated this guy the whole time. And he's so mean to her, and then when he talks about her like she's just something to like, I don't know what word to use that's appropriate, fornicate with. Like, she's just an object. And yeah, I just, 1 star. 1 star. I hated this book. It was the worst book I read this year. And it sucks because I got it for my birthday. I don't know what I'll do with it. So if you guys liked it, please let me know if there was something I was just missing, but like, I just hated it. So yeah, Things We Never Got Over. I would never recommend this to anybody. I just hated it. The next book I don't have in my hands because I let my friend borrow it, but we went back to the Taylor Jenkins Reid train after that because I'm like, I need something good. So when I went on vacation to Disney, I brought One True Loves with me. I loved this book. It was one of her better books. The story is about a woman who gets married and her husband gets lost at sea. Spoiler, it's kind of a spoiler, but they kind of put on the back of the book. They presume he's dead. She eventually moves on and they find out he's alive and he comes home and there's like a lot of awkwardness because she's moved on, she's engaged, but then her husband comes back that she mourned already. So you feel really deeply for this woman, like you feel so bad because like, how do you choose between 2 people that you love? Like, what do you do? I was rooting for one person over the other. I think you end up connecting with one more than the other. I was on the plane ride home from Disney and I was finishing the book and I'm like holding back tears like so badly. It made me cry at the end. I'm just like, I'm sitting in my seat, there's someone right next to me, I'm just like, damn. It was so sad at the end, but I really liked that book. I gave it 4 stars because it's hard to put 4.5 when you have Daisy Jones and the Six or 7 Husbands, but that was probably my 3rd favorite, maybe. because we're about to read another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. I gotta do like a whole video rating all of them. But the last new book that I read this year and finished, I'm still working on one right now, but I won't finish it by the end of the year probably, is Taylor Jenkins Reid's newest book is Carrie Soto is Back. I loved Carrie. She was a bitch and I loved her. But she appears in Malibu Rising, but then we get her story, and it doesn't even focus that much on that piece that she's in Malibu Rising for. It focuses on her tennis career. She is a champion. She is the best of the best. She comes out of retirement because she wants to maintain that title that she has. This is one of my favorite characters of hers that she has written because there's so much depth to her. She's not just a one-dimensional character. She has feelings. She's got reasoning for her feelings. She's not afraid to be a bitch. And they even call her one. And I think I connect with people like that because I've been known to be called a bitch too. But I think she's just a dedicated and determined person. And it shows through her career as a tennis player. So I gave this one 4 stars. I loved it. I did predict the ending a little bit. Sometimes I feel like her books are a little predictable at the end, but I also think I just have read and watched a lot of TV, so I just connect things very quickly. But yeah, I really loved this book. And right now I'm reading Emma by Jane Austen. I bought it earlier in the year, but then I ended up reading Persuasion instead. So I'm only like halfway through Emma, and I'm probably not going to finish it, so that's why I didn't review it. But so far it's good. I can't give a solid review until the end. So that's all of the new books that I read this year. And we're going to do my favorite and my least favorite, which you guys probably already figured that out. We're going to start with my least favorite book. Again, fuck this book. Things We Never Got Over. One of the worst books I've ever read. And I think I only got to about halfway. This is the only book I think I've ever like not finished. That's crazy. That's how much I didn't like it. So, worst book of the year. Favorite book of the year that I read, Daisy Jones and the Six. I'm so excited for the show. I love this book. I love the vibes. I love the 70s rock and roll theme. That's something that, if you don't know about me, I've clearly got an old soul sometimes, and I collect records. I got my Jimi Hendrix lunchbox over there. That's from the 60s, but you know. I enjoyed the story. I love the characters, everything about it. This was the best book that I read this year. That was a lot of me talking to the camera. I get really passionate about my books. I know I don't use the best adjectives to describe them, but my brain is like good or bad. Drop a comment down below what your favorite book this year was, what your least favorite book. If any of these you felt passionate about and you said, Taylor, you're wrong. I actually really loved that book. Please let me know. Like, argue with me. I don't care. Everyone has their preferences. This has been a fun video for me. I really enjoy sitting down and talking about some of my favorite things. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you like and subscribe before you leave. Hit that notification button because I'm going to be posting every day until December 25th. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow.